Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and before I get started, we do talk about the viewer's pick of the week at the end of the video, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. But let's get started. I had a really big haul this week. It's about 14 books, and number 14 for me is Blood Hunt Magik issue 1. I'm not following the Blood Hunt event, but this is a character I've always wanted to get into, and I've tried so much of Magik stories, but there has not been that series that's like, okay, now I'm an Ileana fan. I like Ileana, I think, more when she interacts with other people, like Kitty Pryde. I think her dynamic with Kitty is pretty fun, but as a standalone, I don't really know if this really adds that much to Blood Hunt, and it didn't really make me feel like, wow, that was a great Ileana story. It just kind of felt very fillerish, and the artwork was probably the strongest part about it, but honestly, giving that one 2 stars, I think it's pretty skippable. Moving on to number 13, my other X-Men book for this week, and that's X-Men Heir of Apocalypse issue 2. This is like this transition period between old Krakoa X-Men to new Gail Simone run of X-Men in this new era. With this one, we're kind of spinning its wheels, and this issue in particular felt like that. It doesn't feel like there is as much urgency to find out who the new Apocalypse is. It's just fighting match, and the artwork is not strong enough to deliver on this action-heavy issue. So overall, giving that one 2 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12, the topic of the video, and that is Absolute Power Ground Zero issue 1. So this is technically not the start of Absolute Power. Honestly, when this was first solicited, I'm like, is this a reprint of like the Free Comic Book Day book? I wasn't really sure. It's just an anthology. It's honestly a lot of more cult fan favorite characters. You have Dreamer, you got Superboy's boyfriend, Jay, and then you have this other character who I didn't know in the middle, and maybe he's a new character. And then the last part is honestly the part I was probably most interested in. This new character they're introducing, Absolute Power, that seems to be connecting to Chip Zdarsky's run of Batman, because she's got this like more, I forget the character's name, Batman Czar character look to it. So that was honestly the part I liked the most, but mostly this issue I would say is for people who don't know much about DC Comics. So if you're jumping into this as like your first event ever, you'll find out some cult fan favorite characters, and you'll also find out that Amanda Waller is not the best person. That's pretty much all you're getting here. If you know a lot about DC Comics, then you kind of already know that about Amanda Waller. So I would say unless you're a hardcore fan of these characters, I would just wait for the issue 1 that comes out next week. So that is my full review of Absolute Power Ground Zero, which honestly is actually pretty, yeah, it's $5 too. So I would say most likely just save your money on that one. Moving on to number 11. The last issue of Jackpot and Black Cat, issue 4. Pretty much what I've been saying. The best parts are just seeing Mary Jane and Black Cat interact, but the rest of it is kind of fluffy. Even Black Cat's girlfriend, I feel like, could have been a stronger character. She betrays Black Cat very easily. It all happened so quickly. The villain in particular just wasn't very strong. And hey, does anyone really love Paul? He is a very big part of this issue as well, and the artwork is solid enough, but I just feel like there's been other Mary Jane and Black Cat stories that have been stronger, and this miniseries just doesn't really do it. It felt pretty fillerish. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, this was actually supposed to come out last week, but there was a couple Image books that were delayed, and that is Self-Help issue 1. It's like an Uber driver character who's down on his luck, and he looks like this self-help guy who's famous. The self-help guy dies in his Uber, and he's like, maybe I should take over his life. And because you have two characters that look very similar to each other, honestly, it was an interesting premise that kind of got it confusing on the page, because I'm like, oh, it's cool that this guy's down on his luck, and the complete opposite of this famous person. But also the famous aspect of this self-help guy, I feel like that was hard to connect to. There wasn't really... again, and a lot of connecting tissue here. I think that was definitely the biggest issue for me. Even though I like the art, I like the concept, I just feel like it maybe needed another draft or two to get there to really be as strong as it could have been. Because again, I think the concept is interesting and just didn't really sell me here. So giving that 3 stars, because I, again, did like the artwork here. And that is number 10. Moving on to number 9. Which is Grommets issue 2. This is the most slice of life book you can ever get. So if you enjoy skating, I think you're going to enjoy this. If you grew up in the 80s, you're going to enjoy this. For me, I like being on the outside looking in, I like skating from the outside looking in, and I'm not from the 80s. So I was like, oh, it's just kind of cool to see the differences between growing up in the 80s and now. Like, I think one of the big culture shocks just reading this is that the parents don't really care what he's doing. Like, he's all bloody, and it's just like, okay, the parents don't care at all, and then he's just leaving, and they're like, okay, do whatever you want. So I thought that was really interesting commentary, and it's just cool to see the characters. I don't think there was a big moment in this issue be like, wow, I'm kind of loving this character. I'm on the edge of my seat, but I like the vibe it brings, especially when it comes to the art style. I think there's this really cool California sunniness to it, all while you got the grittiness of skating and the punkness of skating. So overall, giving it 3.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Primer issue 4. This is the last issue of Primer, and we have the new graphic novel coming out. I thought this one was the weaker of the 4, just because you're wrapping things up really quickly, and it's just mostly an action issue. It's how does she become a hero? She saves her parents, and they're like, okay, we're going to continue this hero thing. But I still had a really good time with this. I like the story. I like her personality. I like the building blocks that were built here, and it makes me want to see where her next coming adventures go. Will they be released in single issue format like this, or are we gonna have to follow them through graphic novel? We'll see. I kind of want to wait for the single issues because I think the release of that was kind of fun. I like that they did a graphic novel first and then single issues. That tends not to happen, but you're really catching new audiences by doing that. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7 and number 6, and you'll see why. Superman's number 7, Action Comics is number 6, because they're literally the same story. And most of the time, when you have these arcs, these, House of Brainiacs and things like that, it's a different writer or different artist. It's the same writer, it's the same artist. It really is just a continuation. So they're both pretty much the same. The reason why I put Action Comics higher is I really liked actually the secondary story. I like seeing Lena and how she became this Brainiac type character and how Lex reacts to that. I could see maybe a purist of Superman not loving that Lex is becoming more of a good guy, but I kind of like that angle for him. I'm not saying he should be a complete good guy. I'm sure there's going to be the turning of the tables at some point, like we've been seeing with Green Goblin and Amazing Spider-Man, but it's just something different for him, and I liked his relationship with Lena here, and I think Brainiac was a pretty solid villain throughout. There's parts of it where I feel like it did lag, like Lobo's inclusion in this at all I don't think was very necessary, and I do wish we got to see a bit more from the actual super family like we did in the beginning. And there's a lot of action, it is an event book, so it's just like moments where I wish were quieter and more character driven. It's like, all right, we gotta get through the action here, but I think this was a pretty well balanced event, and overall both issues I'm giving 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 5, which is Spider-Gwen the Ghost Spider, issue 2. This issue is a little weaker than issue 1 for me because I think issue 1 blended a lot of different stories together. You had the TVA, why Gwen's here. This is mostly focusing on Chameleon as a villain, or I guess it looks like it's going to be Chameleon the villain, unless this villain is pretending to be Chameleon, which would be very confusing. And also her relationship with the other Spider characters, which honestly is the part I like the most. I like just seeing this almost into the Spider-Verse vibe when it comes to Spider-Gwen, which is probably why they're doing a story like this, to relate more to the movies. But I like their interaction. The villain's not the most exciting thing in the world, but I want to see where Gwen goes and how she reacts to everything that goes on in Earth 616, and if she really relates here, or if her stories will be better from Earth 65. And the artwork is pretty good too. I like the coloring more than the pencils, but I think the coloring kind of brings it together. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 121. We are getting towards the end of this arc, or really the whole run, and I think they're rebooting Power Rangers after that. And I like this a lot. I wasn't sure if I was going to, because I'm not a huge Billy fan. Like, I respect the character, but he's not my favorite Power Ranger, and I saw that this issue is going to be very based on him. But I really liked what they tackled. It goes back to all the way to Shattered Grid and him forgetting things, and Billy kind of taking charge by the end. And I just liked seeing this voice that you normally don't get to see from Billy, and that's what I love about the comics in general, is that the TV show was very surface level for most of the characters. So to get to see them find their own voice through the comics and really get to see a more mature storyline for them has been really fun. And I think the artwork worked pretty well for this book as well, especially because there's just a lot going on, but it felt nuanced, it felt cohesive because they really centered it on Billy. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and then it's number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Green Arrow, issue 13. Another really well-balanced issue where we get to see the Green Arrow family interact with each other. You actually get to see that a lot in this issue, all while you're getting the plot being progressed as Green Arrow is forced or maybe not forced to team up with Amanda Waller, which obviously is going to tie into Absolute Power. And I love the ending where we get to see Connor become Green Arrow. So there's just a lot that unravels in this issue, all while taking its time to just have some fun with the Green Arrow family. So I feel like it really did a good job at just showing different parts and making them meld together. Even though there's so many characters, it all did feel very cohesive. So giving that 4 stars, and then is number 3. Moving on to number 2, I think the best issue since issue 1, and that is Feral, issue 4, where we're finally getting to head with a lot of things here. We get to see Patches, who's been scratched from issue 1, finally reveal that they are a zombie type character, that they have rabies. And you get to see some really fun pacing for this issue to get to that moment. Also learn some backstory about these cats, and all while learning how the world is dealing with this infection. I just thought it was a well done issue, even though it's things you expected. You're kind of holding your breath because you're like, when's it gonna happen? And obviously curious to see where this takes all the characters / cats. So overall, giving that 4 stars, and then that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, I loved this issue, and that is Zatanna Bring Down the House, issue 1. Something I really like about the Black Label is that we get to see a real indie bend on characters we know and love. And that's exactly what I felt with Zatanna, that it had its own vibe, obviously from the visuals, the colors, and just the look of it. It's like, oh, this is a book I've never read from Zatanna. And then the narrative, it just worked so well here, and it was really character driven, where the opener is Zatanna being bad at magic, and then something happens, and this is part of the mystery, that she kills this boy, it seems like, as she unlocks her magic. And also it's revealed that Zatara is dead, so this also feels like it's maybe a different twist on Zatanna's origin story. And what I love is kind of the build up to that moment, because that's not really revealed until the end, and you get to see the day of the life of Zatanna. Why does she not want to be a big magician, and why does she not want to say the word magic? There's this really interesting, mysterious character watching her show. It's just everything kind of blends in perfectly to make this really cohesive book that keeps you at the edge of your seat, and every page, every balloon, you're addicted. You want to see what's going to happen next as Zatanna. It's only issue 1 or just page 2 or 3, and you're like, I'm fully invested. And that's a special type of issue 1. And again, it goes from the vibe of the look of the book because of the color palette that's chosen, but also just how Zatanna is presented here and how much information is revealed in this issue. And I feel like it gives you just enough to be like, wow, there's a mystery here. But also sometimes with mysteries, you're like, okay, maybe it's a little bit too mysterious. Like, am I ready for issue 2 for that? But again, this issue really does reveal a lot with keeping that cliffhanger that you want for an issue 2 or a mini series. This is Mariko at her best. This is Javier at their best, and I'm really, really excited to read issue 2. I was already pretty excited to read this issue 1, this premiere, but now I'm like completely sold on the book. And also I love that it's a character that is a cult favorite. It's not a Batman, it's not a Superman. It's a character that doesn't always get to have a series and a voice. So to get to see a spotlight, pun not intended, is really great for Zatanna. So that's my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite book was. And last week, honestly, many people said Ultimate Spider-Man, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one.